Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with world-renowned and Grammy-nominated Cuban guitar virtuoso and scholar Benjamin Lapidus. He talked about his brand new 2023 CD. It's a long-awaited 8th Latin jazz recording and 9th as a bandleader for him. Over the years, he has performed and recorded throughout the world as a bandleader, supporting musicians on film soundtracks, video games, television commercials, and albums with some of the most notable musicians in Latin music and jazz. Enjoy this story. Ben, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And before we get into new material and your life and music, how did you survive COVID? That was quite a thing for the jazz community. How did you get through it, and how has it changed the way you do things now?
Wow. Well, first of all, on a personal level, I got COVID really early in the pandemic. I got COVID March 23rd. I was tested positive March 24th of 2020. It was chaos. You know, you heard ambulances running down the street every night. We in New York lost a lot of people, at least 25,000 people. And I know a lot of people who perished as a result of COVID. But for me personally, you know, I got it early. It was kind of scary. I was by myself for a couple of weeks. I couldn't have my family around to help me because nobody really knew what to do. I had friends drop off groceries. It was pretty crazy, and I got it because I was out for a run on the last one of those last beautiful, freaky, warm days in March before the 23rd, the last Friday, and then I felt like $1 million. And then a couple of days later, I when I breathed in, I could feel like pressure in my armpits and my chest. It was crazy, but I got through it. Excuse me. And then a lot of other people got it, so I tried to help out. And I actually I figured if something good could come out of me getting it and surviving it, I started to donate. I participated in 2 studies, actually in one study that kept going. Where they would take my blood and saliva, and they wrote a bunch of scientific articles because they were trying to figure out antibodies. So this was before the antibody test came out, and you know, I figured I could, you know, if something positive could come out of it, maybe I could help people and donate. And then I started to donate plasma just for people who might need it. But how did it affect the music? Well, I think it kept a lot of people from playing. It kept a lot of people apart. A lot of venues closed and had problems. A lot of musicians definitely had a really tough time getting through it. But there were a lot of glimmers of hope. You know, a lot of people started to play outdoors, even in the cold weather. I went to see some friends play in 13-degree weather. You know, I mean, it showed that, you know, the important stuff was music and community, and that we all need each other, and that, you know, as the sort of shutdown of everything happened, I don't just mean like just like the shutdown of normal life, really. As that happened, I think we all kind of reached for music and art and family and friends and all the things that we could to kind of maintain some normalcy. So that's I think a silver lining, but it was definitely a tragedy. I think here in New York, and I think in the rest of the country, people still have to really fully acknowledge the kind of loss and tragedy that COVID presented. I mean, there's some really horrible stories, and a number of really great musicians perished as a result. But I think we're still dealing with that.
So how does it feel to have a new album out now, with the world waking up and things changing?
You know, it's a new era, I think, in some ways. This is also my first new record that I've put out on my own in about 9 years. I played on a lot of other people's records, and things have changed a little bit. It feels good to bring new music to people. It feels good to kind of show people what I was up to during COVID, because a lot of the stuff on this record is a result of that, and what I did leading up to COVID. Because, you know, as you know, a good jazz record or a good record of any kind just documents where the musicians are at that time, what they're up to musically, you know, and how they communicate with each other, etc. And I started working on all the music before COVID hit, and then once COVID hit, I had to really put a lot of stuff on hold, and then sort of, because we couldn't really get into the studio, all the protocols kept changing. So, to be able to finally bring this record out and now be able to play gigs in support of it and promote it, it actually feels like a big relief.
How did this journey begin for you? How did the seeds of jazz get in you and become who you are today?
That's a great question. I can blame it all on my family. My grandmother was a piano player, accordion player, and singer here in New York, and she actually played at Carnegie Hall when she was a little kid, about 8 years old. My father played piano and accordion and gigged professionally as a jazz musician until he was about 22 years old. And he went to the same music school as Dave Liebman and a bunch of other folks here in Brooklyn. So I was really surrounded by jazz and by music, and then by Latin music, really since I was a kid. I didn't really have a choice. And I was started in the piano, but I really early, too early, probably I was 6, and then I went to the guitar and the bass and the trumpet. I really thank my parents for exposing me to great jazz and to taking me to jazz concerts. And my father really played in a kind of Errol Garner, sort of Tatum-ish kind of style, a lot of solo piano block chords style, and really swung and he still swings. He's still swinging as he plays, and I think that really penetrated and came into the very fiber of my being. So, I really owe it to my parents and my family for cultivating the love of jazz and music in me.
What was the very first live jazz show you saw or live show that really made you think, I either want to do that for the rest of my life or I want to be on that stage one day?
Probably, I remember my parents took me to see Herbie Hancock when he did the Rocket Tour. That was probably in 82 or 83 or maybe 84. I remember really being impressed with that and thinking, wow, this would be something that would be great to play in front of a lot of people and make music. But there were other concerts after that had a lot of impact. But that was probably one of the big ones. And I always used to get a kick out of it when we would go someplace, if we were traveling in another country, or we'd go someplace and there's a band or a piano player, and my dad would talk to them and he would say, hey, do you know this tune? And the guy would say, no, but I'm going on break. Why don't you play it? And I think seeing that my dad could just sit down and then, play some tunes like that, the sort of community of jazz and the international fraternity of jazz where we speak this language. We have a common repertoire of tunes, and we know the great improvisers, and the whole the whole idea that it's an international community of jazz and jazz players and jazz appreciators. That was something that I saw from an early age too, looking at my dad, and that really stuck with me, and it still does to this day, because you can really go anywhere, call a tune and sit in and play, or someone could sit down and play with you if you want them to, and I think that was really, that made a huge impression as a youngster.
So you've been at this game for a long time. What is it that you look forward to the most? What do you love the best about being a professional musician?
I love the bandstand communication. I love connecting with the audience. I love the challenges of learning new tunes, writing new tunes, writing music that reflects the here and now, as well as the past and the future. I love the history of jazz. I love, listening to old records, and there's always something new to learn. It's I forgot who explained this one time, said it's a vocation and an avocation, and I think that's really true in my case, because I'm also an educator. So if I can't play and I'm not writing or composing or arranging or practicing, then I'm teaching the music, and that's really that's just a blessing. It's amazing. Music is definitely at the center of my life, but in many, many different ways. So that's what gets me excited, just dealing with the music and the ability to just keep going back to the music and staying focused on the music.
So who have been inspirations for you, consistently in your life? Who's been kind of someone that you've admired and looked up to that made you grow?
There's so many people that have impacted me and helped push me, whether directly or indirectly, but the people that I've interacted with from a young age. One of the biggest influences was a saxophone player named Mario Rivera, who lived in my neighborhood. His sisters and brother worked at my school, and they heard me singing in the school cafeteria, and they go, "Oh, well, we should introduce you to my brother." And he was playing with Dizzy Gillespie's band and Tito Puente's band at the time. He also played with George Coleman and a lot of other people. And I remember going to his house when I was in high school, and he said, "Let's play Pen Up House. We're going to take it through 12 keys, and if you can't nail it, I'm going to pull your ears off." And I was, kind of scared, but I made it through. And he said, "Well, that was pretty good, but if you really want to be a musician, this is what you have to do." And he puts on the Sonny Rollins record, and he plays every solo on the record, note for note, whether it was a piano solo or a saxophone solo or whatever. Just a consummate musician. He could do, solfege, Charlie Parker stuff. I mean, that was a huge, when I saw that as a high school student, I was just like, man. And I would go over his house to just get pointers and practice and get yelled at. So many guys, Mario Rivera, Jerry and Andy Gonzalez were at first kind of distant with me, and then I got, to know them better, and then they started calling me for gigs and even a recording. And those are like my high school heroes, Jerry and Andy Gonzalez, Fort Apache, everything those guys did was just always amazing to me. And they were just incredible musicians. I mean, the list goes on and on. Larry Harlow, Tuck Andress, I know he's, a Kansas guy. I got to do, some studying with Tuck Andress, about, 31 years ago. And it was really impactful. Not just the techniques that he taught me and the sort of philosophies about the guitar, but there was a lot of life practice type stuff that he gave me, and I still look at that to this day. I had a very good mentor at Oberlin Conservatory named Wendell Logan, rest in peace. He impacted a lot of my peers who have gone on to play with some of the greatest jazz musicians in the world. And some of them themselves are as well. But he really taught us a lot of stuff and taught us to really, to look at the music truthfully and to really push yourself and all kinds of ways of getting better things out of yourself. And, he expected a lot of us. So all these people expected a lot out of me and my peers. And I think we all carry that forward with the way that we practice, with the way that we keep pushing the music and, keep trying to maintain the legacy of all those people who took the time to invest in us. So, I mean, I'm probably leaving out so many more people. My guitar teacher from when I was in high school just passed the other day. He was phenomenal. His name was Ed Russell. He taught a ton of people. And he had this incredible system for teaching chord melody on the guitar. He really taught me like some great, jazz guitar stuff when I was, 14, 15 years old. And I mean, I speak for many people who studied with him saying that he was an incredible teacher. It's just this Eddie Deal I studied with also, but he mostly did repair work for me, but we would get together and play a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Eddie. He used to play with, Sonny Stitt and Jack McDuff and Al Haig and a whole bunch of other people. He was with McDuff before George Benson. He was a big fixture here in Harlem. I mean, there's endless musicians. Sonny Bravo, anybody who kind of gave me the time of day and took an interest in what I was doing and gave me criticism and showed me how to do things the right way. They're all in my playing. They're all in my attitude, and I'm eternally grateful to all of them and anybody that asks me about them. I'll always speak highly of them.
Everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, family, friends, fans, but you ultimately live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a guy who is interested in a lot of things. I try to pursue many of them. Sometimes I'm pursuing too many of them all at once, and I expect a lot of myself, so sometimes that can be a lot of pressure I put on myself in terms of executing well in all the projects I am involved in. But I'm curious, I like to learn, I like to improve. I think there will always be room for improvement, and in terms of my own personal ideas of what I like to hear in music and what I like to pursue in music, they're kind of established, but I think they're they're changeable, but they're established. I'm really into melody. I'm into harmony. I'm into swing. I'm into emotion in music, and I can connect with a lot of music on different levels. So I think that's the musical side of me. I think as a person, I try to be ethical and truthful and live my life accordingly. And whether it's as a distance runner or as a musician, I kind of approach things with the same discipline.
So if anyone out there wants to get the new album, they want to know more about you or, any live shows coming up, where's the best place to go?
My website, benjaminlapidus.com, benjaminlapidus.com, has all of the gigs and all the other social media platforms I'm on, to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. But that's pretty much the best way to get in touch. And all of my records, my previous records, are on all the digital platforms as well as under my name. I did my first 5 records under my band name, Sonido Isleño, SONIDO ISLENO. So if you look up Sonido Isleño, I have 5 records under that name. All the music is available out there. And I also have a book about the history of Latin music in New York City, which is from the University of Mississippi Press. And that's also available from their website or from Amazon. So I'm also in your public library, probably.
Excellent. Ben, man, this has been great. Thank you for opening up. Thanks for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you. It's a real pleasure, and thanks for sharing my music with the listeners.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in Cuba, Harlem, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Ben for his time, energy, and cool. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe to us at YouTube. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
I don't know what I'd do without my sweet Ochun.
Neon Jazz.